Welcome to the third segment of PPP loan fraud. As discussed in my previous videos on my YouTube channel, a person charged with a PPP loan fraud may face a series of both serious criminal and civil penalties. One of the most common criminal charges for a PPP loan fraud is wire fraud, 18 U.S.C. Section 1343. Now, in order to convict, the government must prove the following elements of wire fraud. Number one, the government has to prove there is a scheme to commit fraud. You cannot be convicted of wire fraud unless you had a scheme or a plan to commit fraud. Now, fraud consists of knowingly or recklessly telling someone a lie in order to deprive the so-called complaining witness or the victim of something valuable, which typically is money. Number two, defendant has to have a specific intent to commit fraud. Number three, defendant must use wire, internet, radio, television, communication in order to further the scheme. Use of the wires for purposes of fraud laws can mean a number of different things. For example, sending a fax that advances the scheme to commit the fraud, sending a telegram that advances the scheme to commit a fraud, making a telephone call that advances the overall plan to defraud a prospective victim, or initiating or causing someone else to initiate a wire transfer of money in connection with a scheme to defraud a victim. Of course, always use of email to advance fraud would also make you guilty of wire fraud. The communication by wire fraud, or communication by wire rather, has to be made for the purposes of advancing the scheme to defraud somebody. It doesn't need to play a crucial role in the actual scheme. What this means is that you can use the wires for something pretty trivial and still be convicted of wire fraud. Legal defenses against wire fraud charges. Number one, lack of intent. You cannot be convicted of wire fraud unless the prosecutor or the government can show beyond a reasonable doubt that you specifically intended to commit wire fraud. This can be difficult of an element to meet for the prosecutor because it is hard to determine with a certainty what another person was thinking when he or she acted a certain way. For this reason, lack of intent can be a very powerful defense. Number two, mistake of fact. Let's just say you sent an email containing a false statement, but you actually believed that the statement was true. If this is the case, then the prosecution or the government will not likely be able to show that you actually had the specific intent to defraud. Criminal penalties for federal wire fraud. Wire fraud is a federal crime. Therefore, if convicted, defendant can be sent to federal prison as opposed to a California state prison. Wire fraud is also punishable with up to 20 years in federal prison, a fine, or both. If the fraud involves a federal disaster or a financial institution like a national bank, then the maximum sentence increases to 30 years in prison. Thank you for watching. I have a team of professionals who are ready to assist. All you have to do is pick up the phone and give us a call. If you enjoyed this video, I'd greatly appreciate it if you can share. Of course, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. Bye-bye.